Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Let's talk about samurai. Samurai are some of the coldest warriors in all of history, right next to ninjas, Vikings, and knights. I don't know about y'all, but I love a good old samurai story. Coming from an upbringing where I watched a lot of old school martial arts films all the time with my dad, I grew very close to them, especially the ones that surrounded samurai. Those stories had a death grip on me as a child, from legendary stories of Miyamoto Musashi to the samurai of fiction like Himura Kenshin, the Hitokiri Batosai, and Jin Sakai, the hero and ghost of Tsushima Island. I grew up with these kind of stories for years, loving the stories where they live by the blade and the codes that they've written for themselves. That's why Rurouni Kenshin is one of my most favorite samurai stories today, or Samurai X if you're from the Toonami era. And because of my love for the samurai, I always give any form of samurai content a chance, which brings me to my watch of the 2021 Netflix original anime Yasuke. And this is arguably one of the most questionable samurai stories I've ever witnessed to date.
What? How? Why? I have so many questions!
For some of you, the name may sound very familiar. Yasuke is a legitimate historical figure. It is theorized that Yasuke was history's first black samurai. For some historical context, Yasuke was a slave that was once owned by Alessandro Villano, an Italian Jesuit mercenary. In 1579, Alessandro brought Yasuke to Japan. When he was brought to Japan, his very existence there caused a big stir, because not many Japanese people were familiar with a black man, especially a man as dark a skin as his. One of the people that was curious about Yasuke was Oda Nobunaga, a powerful feudal lord. Yasuke and Nobunaga reportedly struck up a friendship after meeting, with Nobunaga being appreciative of Yasuke's strength and demeanor. He decided to buy him from Alessandro and put him into Nobunaga's service. Yasuke was given the rank of samurai, making him one of the very few non-Japanese individuals who had attained that honor. He was even given his own residence and his own katana, and served Nobunaga in many different ways, being a bodyguard and fighting in many battles. Unfortunately, after the forced self-deletion or seppuku of Nobunaga in 1582, after the betrayal of General Akechi, Yasuke fought to avenge his fallen master, but was beaten and was taken captive. He was supposed to be executed by Akechi, but due to him not being Japanese, he was seen to not be bound to the samurai code or the Japanese samurai code, and was sent back to Kyoto and his life was spared, essentially making him become a Ronin. After that, not much is known about his life after leaving Japan. It is theorized that he went back to his home country, which was also theorized to be Ghana. Now, when Netflix announced this show, this anime, my knees were quaking with anticipation, boys, despite some of the conflicting feelings I have with Netflix when it touches anything that relates to anime. I was excited to see what they would do with the story of Yasuke. Now, did I expect a historical adaptation? Maybe. Did I expect to see what I saw? No, I didn't. This show deserved so much more, and I know good and well I could have given the respect that it deserved. Let me break down the story for you before I get to that point. So, just like the title of the show, the main character is Yasuke, or if you want to call him by his birth name, I'm sure you can say that. After the betrayal of Akechi, Nobunaga's forces and fortress were under attack. Outside, you see a variety of warriors on the field: samurai, archers, mages, the mechs from Code Geass and Gundam.
Call my therapist. Tell him he's a rich man.
Thousands of men are giving up their lives to fight for their lord. However, Nobunaga remained in the fortress with Yasuke by his side, his only remaining advisor and the only person he trusts left. His fortress began to burn down, and Yasuke urged him to stand and fight. Do one last stand, fight in a blaze of glory. But he refused and decided to commit seppuku on himself and force Yasuke to be his second. Basically, lobbing his head off. After that, Nobunaga's forces fell to the Dark Army, and the Dark Army was victorious, forcing Yasuke to exile himself and renounce his samurai past and essentially become a Ronin. Fast forward 20 years and Yasuke has survived the battle and has gone by a new name known as Yasan. Now he's living in a humble life as a fisherman in a no-name village somewhere. The only remnant of his old life is a charred banner of his master hanging up in his cabin. Every morning he gets his Weapon X flashbacks back to when he assisted to the self-deletion of his master and has become a more jaded, quiet, self-preserved, and secluded form of himself in the small village. My man man is just trying to live a quiet life despite being haunted every day. On the bright side, he has his own Yahiko clone to keep him company. Now, one day, a woman named Ichika, who sings at the bar that Yasuke frequently visits, asks for Yasuke's help because she needs an escort up the river from the village to visit a special doctor. Her daughter has a magical sickness. Basically, every time she lies down and gets close to anyone, she starts glowing blue and starts sending nukes everywhere. Now at first, he refuses because he knows it's a very treacherous journey and he says, I'm not trying to get involved in that mess, you deal with your own problems. But he's a good guy, so he gaslights himself into doing it anyways and comes to her late at night and says, hey, I'll help you out to get you to the doctor. She's glad and they go on their own little journey. They leave the same night, and not too long after beginning their journey, these monkeys, they get third party by Shang Tsung from MK, Ivy from Soul Calibur, and I don't even know what you are. What the I don't know what you are.
Whoa, man, you're way too close!
Third party says, hand over Saki, who is a little girl by the way. They see Yasuke and realize there's another darkie running around Japan.
He's black. We can see that.
They fight, Yasuke tries not to die, Saki uses a little magic explosion ex machina, the mom lost an arm, and Yasuke passes out. Typical anime fashion. Soon, Yasuke wakes up, he finds Saki, but he can't find the mom? Wait, is she dead? What do you mean she's dead? When did she die? She lost an arm. That doesn't mean dead. Did the girl incinerate her or something? That doesn't make any sense. If that's the case, then why are they both alive?
Whatever.
Anyways, Yasuke realizes this isn't worth it, so he decides to tell the daughter that her mom is dead and takes her back to the fishing village. The little girl's not happy, she calls Yasuke an asshole, she runs off, and Yasuke couldn't care any less. So homie decided to go back to the bar that he frequently visits, and just to go back to his own daily routine. But psych, he can't go back to normal. He gets third partied again by the same squad that jumped him in the beginning. And my boy gets mollywopped, like legitimately mollywopped. Ragdoll across the room. Then that's when Yasuke learns that the mercenaries are hired by some random pastor named Father Abraham. Father Abraham is kind of like the side villain to the main villain, so he's not the main villain, so he's the kind of like a side villain in the front of the main villain type of deal. You know, you get what I mean.
Sorry, I don't speak Italian.
He frames the death of the singer on Yasuke to the fishing village. So the fishing village turns against Yasuke, and his ultimate plan is to torture Yasuke so that he can learn the location of the little girl. But by the way, the little girl is in the same village, so keep that in mind. Also keep in mind the village is not big. The only thing that's really big in the general vicinity is the forest outside of the village. So Yasuke gets captured by Father Abraham. Saki obviously doesn't believe that Yasuke is responsible for the murder of her mother, but the village does, and some of the people were even turning against Yasuke, but she's the only one who's on his side. Now, up to this point, you've been following along with me, right? Wait for it, you're gonna get lost. Trust me. So at Abraham's hideout, Yasuke is being tortured. The information that Abraham wants is to find out where Saki is so that he can take Saki back to his main boss. Saki is back at the fishing village, the same fishing village that he just left, taking Yasuke with him. And the mercenaries went with him as well. So they all went to the same hideout, tortured Yasuke. He told the mercenaries to go back to the village to find Saki, and when they find her, bring her back to the same exact hideout so that they can kill Yasuke and then bring Saki to the main boss. The mercenaries get back to the village, they try to find Saki. Saki finds them first, she uses her powers, they kind of manifest in a much better way randomly. She beats them and somehow off screen convinces the mercenaries who are doing this for money to tell her where the hideout of their boss is without any form of compensation. But while that is happening, Yasuke is still being tortured by the pastor. Then we learn that Father Abraham serves the main villain, who is the Dark Daimyo, and his mission is to capture Saki and serve her to the Daimyo so that she can become stronger, immortal, essentially world domination. Abraham continues to torture Yasuke to the point that this man should be dead 100 times over, just blasting him with lightning, fire, everything that he has at his disposal. Then Saki bursts down the door with all the mercenaries trapped up in all of her power and decides to fight Father Abraham, who decides to turn into a full rage monster. Yes, rage monster. So she decides to go full Super Saiyan Blue on us, and they have this most Dragon Ball Z fight I've ever seen in my entire life for a samurai anime. I was so visibly confused. They fight for a little bit, and then she ends the fight by slamming a giant stone cross in the middle of his chest, killing the father immediately. Yasuke helped a little bit, but he was already injured, weak from being tortured, so he didn't really do much. We are now at the rising action of the story. Yasuke has decided to go against his original plan of going back to the little village and decide to go back on his original journey and take Saki to the actual magic doctor that she needs to find. And in order to do that, Yasuke decides to go back and don his old samurai garb and his old samurai sword again, joining back the samurai ways again. They begin their journey, but oh no, the daimyo knows that they're coming. So she decides to send another warrior or soldier or monster to go take down Yasuke and capture Saki. But not only that, this warrior gets buffed by the Dark Daimyo. They got a Zenkai boost. Amazing, so it should be an easy fight. Kurosaka, the name of the warrior, decides to jump in the way of Yasuke's and Saki's venture whilst they're halfway there. They are super close to the doctor now, but she decides to get in their way and is prepared to take out Yasuke then and there. They have the most ridiculous fight I have ever seen, and that crap lasted almost 6 minutes. And Yasuke doesn't win. Kurosaka runs away because she can't handle a mere mortal man. She goes back to the daimyo. Daimyo's disappointed. She kills her. And now we are edging towards the climax. The doctor happens to be one of those mage warriors that was introduced at the beginning of the series. The very beginning. He's the first dude that you see on the screen when you see the war happening at Obunaga Tower. He is living in seclusion with a bunch of other kids and people who are defending themselves against the Dark Army, with a bunch of other kids that have the same powers as Saki. But of course, Saki, being the main character, has the more special power and is significantly more powerful than the rest of them, and has mastered pretty much 80% of it already before even done any training. Saki learns more about Yasuke's background, learning that Yasan is not his real name, and that he used to be a samurai back in the olden days. But despite that, Yasuke is ready to leave Saki behind in the capable hands of the doctor. He's not ready for the fight in life, he's not trying to do any rebellion, he's trying to head back home and go back to his fisherman life. But as he's ready to leave, the Dark Army is converging on the little sanctuary that is defending all these little kids and the warriors that are there training to defend against them this entire time. They are beginning to converge, and Yasuke decides to stay so they can help them fight off the new army that's coming against them. Hell, even the mercenaries join later on in the mid-fight. So, like in the beginning of the series, there's a massive battle. People are slicing and dicing everybody in every different direction. Yasuke's in the middle of the mix, slicing up everybody with ease, no issue, no problem. Has not aged a day in his skills. But in the middle of this fight, Yasuke is having a psychic duel with the daimyo. Oh yes, the psychic duel.
What kind of place is this?
Basically, there's this realm called the Astral Realm, and she had access to it. Daimyo uses the Astral Realm to get to Saki in a mental place and try to steal the power from a spiritual link. She fails because Saki has the power of mental power or something and pushes the daimyo back with the help of the mage doctor. Saki wins the psychic duel, but the daimyo is still alive. The daimyo didn't die, she just pushed her back. But the dark forces are converging upon their temple, and they have not many forces to go against them. So Yasuke says, look, I'll take me and Saki and whoever else is coming with me to go fight the daimyo in person. How did these baboons know where her hideout was? I don't know, and I still don't know. Anyways, we are converging to the final fight of the series. Yasuke takes Saki and takes her to the hideout, cuts through a bunch of dark warriors, and makes it to the temple where the daimyo is holding herself and protecting herself. Yasuke goes through some important battles, he gets hallucinating his old master, and she's trying to trick Yasuke into killing Saki with some hallucinations, and she almost succeeds, but with the power of being my mentor and my father figure because my mom is dead, she breaks Yasuke free from the mind control and they team up to fight against the daimyo. And again, I swear to you, this is probably another fight based off of another anime. I'm pretty sure it's based off of Naruto, because I swear the daimyo looks like Orochimaru. And hell, even a moment in the fight, Yasuke and Saki have a moment where she passes her energy towards Yasuke and his armor starts to glow blue. So Yasuke gets Super Saiyan Blue too as well. Hey, share the power. I'm here for it. They have their massive climactic fight. Yasuke wins, but the daimyo doesn't get killed. Instead, they have the humble ending where Yasuke says, look, you are now pathetic and weak now. Your fate is in the hands of the people that you've hurt. Last time I checked, you're one of the people she hurt. But hey, so the daimyo's still alive, but it's theorized that she probably got destroyed by the townspeople, burned at the stake, whatever tickles your fancy and how the story ended. And everything becomes all fine and dandy. Yasuke and Saki return to the fisherman village and everything goes back to normal. Now, I can see what direction this anime is trying to go, but as someone who has seen these kind of stories all the time, I can only see a few parallels that this show is trying to incorporate. A man riddled with regret walks a lonely one-man path, has a scruffy childish admirer that has a naive viewpoint related to their violent past, a companion that helps to keep the MC on track and keeps them from reverting back to their negative ways. The story about the jaded and regretful Yasuke had the potential to truly be compelling and be able to hold a candle to the of its genre. However, the story suffers from major flaws, one being the pacing. Some of you might say, oh, the show is only 6 episodes, of course the pacing is going to be fast. I would be inclined to agree with you if only there were other series that have less episodes than that and still were able to take care of their pacing and give a good story in the meantime. A prime example is Afro Samurai, a story that surrounds revenge. Every moment and conversation from the beginning to end, you know and understand where this man is going and how this story is going to progress. If the story wanted to deviate, it would still be confined to the rules and laws that character is going by. Even the hesitation he makes with interactions and fights adds another layer of depth to him. For Yasuke, you can't digest anything as each episode progresses. All the sequences and events and conversation he has never seem to break, never seems to slow down or focus, no matter if the environment changes or how hectic the environment is. Take a look at this example.
You snore.
What's her name?
Saki. She's gotten worse in the past few weeks.
Does she always sweat like this?
The sweating is new. You should get more rest. The boy wants to be a great warrior. He looks up to you. Why? Who are you?
I'm just a boatsman. Nothing special about me. He's just impatient to become a man.
I've seen the way you move to avoid his attacks. I hear things you say. The way you yell out in your sleep. Like a man haunted by his past.
The necklace you wear. The symbol is familiar. I've seen it before.
Why are you doing this?
Doing what?
Helping us. Why did you change your mind? And what does that mean?
Where I'm from, every man and woman cares for every child. It is our duty to make sure every child is safe.
All that information, we got a whole lot of nothing from that. Yasuke doesn't want to be here. You get that from the first 3 episodes, but after that, you don't see where he decides to fully put his life on the line for this random little girl. In fact, I'm surprised he doesn't resent her. Another is the anime's conflict. We went from rogue Japanese generals to mercenaries to mutant pastors, then to a demon dark lord in the depths of a fucking mansion. I get that the villain doesn't have to be complicated, but it doesn't have to be world ending either. The Dark Daimyo is a villain that you don't even interact with until the 3rd episode, and even then each interaction doesn't even involve Yasuke, it only involves Saki. Saki is the main character of this series, not Yasuke. You don't follow Yasuke's progression, you only follow the MacGuffin that is Saki. Then, when the story ends, Yasuke doesn't really get any resolution. The past of his master's death still haunts him. He still doesn't want to be a samurai anymore. The real major difference is that they beat the villain, Yasuke doesn't hate holding his sword anymore, and they just go back to the fishing village and live a very happy life. It's the most safest story endings ever. From the beginning, you see that Yasuke had depth. He wasn't accepted by some of the samurai generals because he was non-Japanese, not even because he was black. He had to kill his master and the only person besides Nobunaga to accept him in the samurai ranks and actually saw him as a true adversary and teacher, because she ended up being a traitor. There was so much potential for this to be a great redemption story, but it was whittled down to a game of Mr. President and Yasuke was just forced to play. Now, if I were to rewrite this series, I would do it like this. Episode 1, just like in the anime, we get into a war. We get a similar beginning, but how I would shift it is kind of make it lean towards his historical side as a character and have him in the middle of the fight and more or less holding down the front gate of the Nobunaga Tower. He's leading the defense, but his team is falling line by line and sees the Dark Army samurai and samurais who are responsible for the betrayal of Oda are pushing forward. Then, a young samurai that is part of the final line of defense, the closest line to Yasuke, convinces him to speak to Nobunaga, for he has instructed him to give him this message to Yasuke if the defense began to fall rapidly. He listens and goes to Nobunaga. Like in the anime, he tries to convince him to have a final push to the enemy, let's finish off strong, but he's drunk and is saddened by the betrayal of the clan and his general samurai. He believes he doesn't deserve an honorable death and decides to punish himself by seppuku and please Yasuke to be his second. Then I would add a scene where Yasuke is captured by Akechi, who is influenced by the Dark Daimyo, and takes his armor, cuts his hair to where it becomes long and floppy like in the later on, and then I'll have Akechi say a line like,
"In these lands we don't have wretched swords that are stained by the blood of their masters. I don't care where you go, but carry that shameful blade with you. Now everything is how it's supposed to be. You were never supposed to be a samurai. Go rot in the field that you were once born. The black samurai is no more."
Then he shamefully leaves behind his old home with a charred banner of his master and a wakizashi blade sealed in a old rustic brown bag that he carries everything in with him. He ventures for days, then stumbles upon a small fishing village and sneaks into a shack by the river just so he can rest, just because he's exhausted and he's starving. You can make it in more insult to injury, make it worse by making him accidentally eat a bucket of bait, throws up, and because of him throwing up and being disgusted of what he ate, he passes out in the shack. He wakes up and it's morning. He smells cooked fish and notices that a small animal pelt is over him like a blanket. He finds the close village's fisherman. We can name him something like Yuki, cooking some salmon on some sticks. He notices Yasuke and greets him like this maybe.
"Well, never thought I would stumble upon a washed up samurai in my shack, especially one that looks like you. Don't worry, I'm not gonna kick you out or point my fishing hook at you. Please, sit down and eat. I assume you must be tired from the Battle of Nobunaga Tower. Sorry, I kinda stooped at your things and I saw the Nobunaga crest. Please be calm and rest here."
Yasuke eats with the fisherman, and as he asks Yasuke a question, Yasuke only responds in very few words. He asks where Yasuke plans to go. He says either finding Alessandro, the man that previously owned him and served him again, or find his way back to his homeland. Unfortunately, Alessandro died years ago and transport out of Japan has been restricted, so he has no place to stay. Yuki, the fisherman, offers Yasuke that he can stay in the shack as long as he works with him as a fisherman to bring fish to the village for trading. Yasuke agrees and puts his sword, like in the anime, locked in a vase and hooks Nobunaga's wakizashi blade to his waist and hangs the banner above where he sleeps. 20 years pass and he has become accustomed to being a fisherman and still can't get a good night's sleep because of the nightmares he gets on a regular basis. Yasuke has now renamed himself Yasan and works with Yuki every day. We can keep the little boy that tries to train with Yasuke, but since he reminds him of the young samurai in the fight at Nobunaga Tower, he tries to advise him to a different path, but is adamant on going to becoming a samurai on his own. Ichika, who still wants help for her daughter, can ask Yuki instead of Yasuke because she still doesn't trust Yasuke. He is still considered a stranger despite how long he's been there. Yuki agrees to do this mission despite Yasuke telling him, "Hey, this is a dangerous path, this might not be working out for you, please reconsider." But then Yuki says it's going to be okay. He tells Yasuke to hold down the fort and and goes on the mission. The little boy can secretly follow Yuki's boat as he's escorting Ichika and her daughter, and the boy witnesses Yuki and Ichika and her daughter get attacked by samurai mercenaries. Not these guys. The little boy runs back to the village and warns Yasuke. He goes up to the river to find Yuki, but he has been killed and finds his body has been cut and slashed and has some dark power emanating from it. Yasuke sees that he is barely alive and desperately tries to save him, but Yuki, with his dying breath, calls him by his samurai name Yasuke instead of Yasan. He asks him to promise to save the mom and the girl because they could be the key to freeing these lands from the daimyo's control. Yasuke accepts the promise, buries Yuki, and searches for the mom and daughter with only his fisherman clothes and the wakizashi blade that once was owned by Nobunaga. He finds a camp nearby that is holding the mom and the daughter hostage. He takes down the Dark Army and the Ida clan traitors that were keeping them captive without any problems with major ease. As he saves them, he's taking them back to the village, but the mom pleads with Yasuke to take them back on the journey that Yuki was taking them in the first place. He refuses and he's continuing to take them back to the fisherman village. However, as they converge back to the village, the shack that he was been staying in is burning. He rushes back and saw two specialized Dark Army samurai generals have found the shack when Yuki's dead body was reported missing and realized it was moved. Yasuke and Ichika fight the generals and she gets fatally wounded in the fight. Yasuke finishes the both of them off and for a moment forgets that the mom is hurt and tries to save the banner that is hanging in there. But the fire explodes, sending Yasuke flying and knocks him out. But before he passes out, a bright blue light shines and that is all he sees before he passes out. Yasuke is awoken by sobbing and realizes he's covered in water and sees that the fire was put out, but the shack is a charred and scorched mess. The banner didn't survive the fire, but the only thing that lived was the vase that holds his sword. He sees that Saki is crying and is hunched over what seems to be the body of her mother. He sees the necklace on her neck and realizes that she and her daughter are also from the Igna clan, and behind Saki, he, for a moment, flinches and reaches for Nobunaga's wakizashi blade. He's never going to kill an innocent child, but for a brief moment, a mass amount of rage entered his mind that he couldn't control. He pulls Saki away from her mom. She kicks, she screams, she yells, she's pleading to have her mom back, but he puts her down on the grass not too far away and decides to wrap her mom up in the brown bag that he once held to carry everything in, with some extra cloths that seem to survive the fire. Then he puts the mom's body onto Yuki's boat and then burns him and sends him down the river. Then, without saying a word, Yasuke will look at the girl and just say, "Where's the doctor?" She points in an arbitrary direction. He goes into the burned down shed, grabs a rope and the vase that holds his sword and wraps it around his shoulder like a work shoulder bag. He goes to Saki and says, "Come." They begin their journey to the doctor. Meanwhile, the army is waiting for reporting from the past teams that they sent out to get Saki, but they've heard nothing, so the daimyo gets upset and orders Akechi to send another group out to go get Saki. As days are passing and they're venturing through forests and venturing through other villages, Saki's asking Yasuke a bunch of questions and is still mourning the death of her mother, but she's using this as an opportunity to keep that off of her mind. But Yasuke's not really giving her much. Only one word answers, and even then he says, "I don't know," or "You don't need to know." And then for a moment he snaps and says,
"My name is Yasan. I am nothing more than a fisherman. There is nothing more for you to know. I know you're still mourning the death of your mother, but rest assured I am here to fulfill my promise. Until then, I would suggest keeping your voice down. We don't want to attract..." Then boom. They're attacked by magic-using samurai and attempt to capture them. This would be the first 2 episodes, and this can be fit into the same episode time frame from the first 2 original episodes, and you still have time to squeeze in your flashbacks and backstories. As for episodes 3 to 4, I would do it like this. The magic-using samurai seem to have a spell that taps into dark power that immobilizes their enemies. During the fight, Yasuke is able to dispose the majority of them except for 2, one being one of the General Akechi's children. He uses the dark power and defeats Yasuke. As Yasuke is about to get killed, Saki freaks out and the blue light that Yasuke saw earlier comes back. He is now floating in the air and a bunch of objects and weapons are being telepathically thrown at a general. He loses his footing and is now immobilized. Yasuke is ready to kill him, limps forward with rage in his eyes. He's prepared to destroy this man. He holds the Nobunaga's wakizashi blade to his neck, not before piercing him a few times and even making him yell and scream for help. Yasuke then just yells, "Why didn't you just kill me? Why let me live like this? All I had was respect and I must be punished for it? Very well. Then I'll make sure the disrespect is mutual.
As he's about to kill Akechi's son, Saki stops him with the power that she has and pleads him to stop torturing him. The son escapes and Yasuke is furious, yells at Saki, "Why? We need him, you naive child. He might have the village destroyed, so why get in my way?" She stands frozen in fear and cries. She reminds him that you want to keep your promise, not become a vengeful monster. Yasuke regrets his actions and sets up a camp. Meanwhile, Akechi is plotting with the daimyo and learns of Yasuke's resurgence from the previous fights, and learns that he's traveling with Saki. The daimyo is angry that Akechi has failed multiple times and he's saying, "Let's go get the girl together," and she decides to bless him with more power to be able to do this properly. Back at Yasuke's camp, he decides to be softer with Saki. He apologizes for her demeanor and actions. If she asks if she knows much about her past, she declines. He places the vase in front of her and takes out the sword and reveals that his samurai name is Yasuke, and once served Oda Nobunaga. She gets excited about this news because she knows about Oda and she respects the samurai. He explains to her why he's filled with so much frustration due to the death that was caused by Akechi, still following him all these years later, and the fact that he still feels just as powerless as he was when he first was exiled by Akechi after Nobunaga was killed, especially that he was the one who had to take the life of his own master, so that trauma lives with him day by day, and he doesn't want the image that he has of his master in his mind to be tainted by the fact that he's perceiving him as a cowardice for taking his own life, and he doesn't want to apply that mindset to himself because of how crazy everything is happening to him right now, just because he wants to live a normal life now and have left that samurai life behind. He also asks about Saki and her powers and if she understands them. She says no. Then Yasuke decides to make the promise that he will protect her until she gets to the doctor, and he will do everything in his power to keep her safe up to that point. Pushing on, they find the doctor, and he finds out it is his old battle buddy that was a mage in the beginning, like in the anime, but you include the young samurai from the beginning as well. He hasn't died from the first line of defense. He was able to survive. Yasuke is surprised and wondering what's going on, and realizes that this is a sanctuary for a bunch of people who are training to fight the Dark Daimyo. Episode 5 would pretty much stay the same, like how it was in the anime, just no psychic duel. Take that out. That's stupid. I would replace the psychic duel with Yasuke accepting the fact that he's willing to wield this sword once more and don a new samurai armor that's accustomed to the current time that he's in. Keep in mind, it's 20 years past. There has to be a lot of differences now. And he's doing everything in his power to make sure that Saki is safe and that the sanctuary stays protected. For the final episode, I would write it as Yasuke is fighting in the midst of the army. The army is at the sanctuary's doorstep, replaying the same kind of war that's happening in the beginning of the episode, and he's doing everything in his power to lead everyone to victory. But then Akechi, back in a tower that's far away from the battle, is taunting Yasuke to have a one-on-one duel. Saki tells him to go, and even the battle buddies tell him to go as well, and he decides to say, "I'm going to finish this and this war will end now." And then he makes it to the tower, and then Akechi decides to talk some shit to Yasuke.
So the dark samurai lives, or the black samurai lives, whichever you prefer. I really should have executed you that day, but it would have just been too easy. Executing you would have been accepting that you were a part of that samurai honor, the samurai code, and I would rather die than give you that honor. If I absolutely knew you would overcome such mental adversity, I would have reconsidered. Power is everything. Nobunaga failed to see that, choosing to treat the laws that we always had like playthings. With the power I have now, no village, no populated landmass would have to reject the codes that we hold. Now I am going to make sure that this is the reality that we live in, and you're in my way. Prepare yourself.
Yasuke and Akechi fight, and Yasuke is struggling really hard because Akechi has that dark power on his side. But then Saki pleads with the mage battle buddy and asks him, "Hey, is there a way for me to help Yasuke from this point in time now? We're far away from each other, is there anything we can do?" And the mage battle buddy can give her an ability or show her the ability to help him enhance his power and strength without having to be close to him. So she was able to imbue some of her magic into Yasuke's armor, making him have an even playing field against Akechi. They fight and Yasuke gets the upper hand and defeats Akechi with a single blade strike to the chest, and he he falls to his knees, and then Yasuke raises his blade over his head. That would probably have him say this:
I speak your languages and I live by your code. Nobunaga showed me true honor and what humility is meant to be. I know not if I will wield this blade again, but I will be sure you never unsheath yours again.
And as he's about to do the final blow, he says this as he's about to bring the sword down to Akechi's head.
There is no honor to be here, only my pain in your blood.
Kachi's head gets completely severed. Now Yasuke faces the Dark Daimyo, the final boss. At first she admires Yasuke's skill and even offers him to be her next Dark Samurai if he brings her Saki. He knows that she isn't as powerful as he should be without Saki's power and refuses under the pretenses that he's going to keep his promise. Now from here, if you want to do the goofy super anime fight, that'd be fine, but in my written version I would have just made it where he gives her in one good clean cut and she's finishing 1 or 2 strikes. And when she's beaten, the tower falls and Yasuke walks out with the head of the daimyo and the arm of Akechi, showing that he's defeated them both. Yasuke is praised, returns to the fishing village with Saki and begins rebuilding the shack and continues to train the little boy and lives the normal life that he wishes to have, and he wields his samurai sword loud and proud because he feels honored that he was able to use his sword again in an honorable way that Nobunaga would have truthfully advocated for. And just like that, we're pretty much done. Please let me know what you thought of my changes, if they were an improvement or dog shit. I know they're not perfect, but I gave them a try. Other than that, thank you all for the massive support on the last video that I did. I was surprised to see that many views and comments and subscribers coming at once just for a video that I didn't even think was going to do so well. So I'm glad you guys liked it. And I am currently working on a full video for my CW Flash Total Rewrite. So be on the lookout for that video. Other than that, please like this video. It's your boy Katakan. It's been awesome. Peace.
FMA, handle business, don't play. On point when it comes to the anime. Jack and Daxter, ayy, let's go. The ultimate heroes, don't stop, we on the road. Karukan. Yeah, welcome to the channel.